Well, Brian, we're going to take a chance here. I know we've only got a half an hour show, but we're going to open up the door for one of Brian's favorite topics on our farm. It's drain tile.
Well, the reason why I get so excited about this tiling thing is we've had such good success with this, and farmers all over the country have, because as we've talked about for years and years, drainage is the most important thing to raising good crops. If you don't have good drainage, you are not going to raise a good crop. I don't care what other things you do. So you've got to get this thing under control. But today we wanted to focus on what new things are there in terms of tiling that you might consider for your farm going into this next season.
You know, one of the things that we get a lot of questions about, especially in the Western Corn Belt, is can I actually sub-irrigate back through my tile lines? And the answer to that is yes, you can. I mean, it certainly takes some planning on the front side. It's going to take some extra equipment and this kind of thing, but it can be done. The problem with it, or the challenge with it, is it's going to cost a little bit of money. It's not completely cheap. It's not like, well, I've got these tile lines out there that are at 50 or 100 foot spacings. I'm just going to start pumping water back through and everything's going to be great out in my field. But you end up with a field that's very uneven. So when you're doing that, when you're going to do some sub-irrigation, you've got to move those lines a lot closer together. So when you're planning your system out, maybe your lines are at 20 feet apart or something like that. It'll just depend on what type of soil you have and how much water movement you can get through the soil, but you can actually put water back out under the ground. It's a good thing for many ways in that it takes a lot less water than it does to irrigate over the top when you have to deal with things like heat and sun and all these things going on that are going to help make that water evaporate and be less efficient.
If you're going to do this sub-irrigation though, you're going to have what we call drainage water management systems. In other words, just shut-offs at the end of your tile lines. And it might not just be at the end, it might be halfway in your tile line. It all depends on slope. In other words, if you have a very flat field, you can probably get by with one shut-off at the end of the field. If you have some slope out there, you might need 2, 3, even 4 shut-offs in the field as you go up that slope. We just need to be able to stop the water at that point so the water can filter out of the tile line.
Well, the big question when you're thinking about irrigating back through those tile lines is, where's the water going to come from? Do you have to have a holding pond? Do you have to have a well? You know, what kind of system does it take to get water back in those lines?
Yeah, well, it could be either one of those things. It's just, if you're going to have a holding pond, it's going to have to be a really big holding pond, because don't forget that just 1 acre inch of water is 27,154 gallons. So that's a lot of water if you want to put very much back through the system. But it could be a holding pond in combination with a well. That's another thing that you may consider doing. Our whole point with this sub-irrigation thing is just we've had a lot of questions about it. We want you to know it's definitely possible. Just talk to a tiling expert in your area and they can maybe help you out with that.
One thing we're doing on our farm is we're monitoring that water, we're testing it, we're looking to see if there are nutrients in there, and then we're trying to fix that if there are any nutrients. For example, if you're thinking about, well, I may have some nitrate coming out of that water because nitrate can leach, and like this spring, for example, we had some big time rains. It may have pushed some nitrogen down. I wonder how much came out the tile lines. Well, we've put in a bioreactor on one of our outlets where the water actually moves through a bunch of wood chips to try and filter out any nitrate. And we took some readings this spring in conjunction with South Dakota State University, and we actually saw that, yeah, there was a little bit of nitrate. We went to that biodigester or bioreactor, and we took out that nitrate, and the water coming out the end was absolutely pure.
All right, so as soon as Darren talks about absolutely pure, let's just make this clear. There is absolutely no water that's 100% pure.
Even bottled water, you're allowed to have up to 10 parts per million of nitrate. And we look at our river that flows relatively close to our farm, right along some of our fields, and the water there has like 1 part per million of nitrate in it, or maybe 2 at the most. It's very low. And the water coming out of our drainage tile, we've never seen exceed drinking water standards for nitrate.
In the United States now, phosphorus is the #1 water quality issue that we've got, and phosphorus doesn't move in soil. So when a farmer puts it down at 6 inches deep, let's say, it stays right there. It's not dropping down into the tile line. It's not going out with tile water. So how does phosphorus ever get into water if it doesn't leach through the soil? Well, the reason it gets there is soil erosion. And it's a proven fact that when you put tile in your ground, you're going to have less soil erosion. So this is one of the things I always tell people. You're going to have way better downstream water quality when you put tile in. as opposed to when you don't have tile in, because you're going to have a lot less erosion, you're going to have a lot less phosphorus that's ending downstream.
Well, our one potential problem, Brian, is where we have surface inlets, and that's something that many farmers are working on across the country. Is, you know what, that's the way we used to do things. We'd put surface inlets in kind of a low area of the field to try and get water out of there and save our crop. Now what farmers are doing, since many farmers are putting in drain tile themselves, they're just putting in more lines. Maybe those tile lines are only 10 feet apart, maybe they're a little more shallow than normal. But if you put a whole bunch of tile lines in those low areas, you could actually take out that surface inlet and do almost as well, yet still get that water to filter down through the soil and take out impurities like the phosphorus that could potentially wash right into a surface inlet.
One more thing, now that farmers have modern technology like GPS, they don't have to use lasers anymore, so they're much more accurate with this GPS, and really good tile plows, so they can put tile in very accurately at 3 feet deep. They don't need to go down to 4 or 5 or 6 feet deep like a lot of farmers used to do. At 3 feet deep, you don't take nearly as much water out of the field. There's not nearly as much going downstream. We're preserving more for the farmer. All we're doing is lowering the water table to 3 feet to give our crops good room to grow.
Well, you know, just like everything else going on in agriculture, drainage tile is changing. Every year you need to keep up with what's new, what's going on, what new techniques are being done, what new equipment there is, because there are things that can be improved on your farm. Even if your drainage tile has been in for many years and is working just fine, there's still some tweaks that can be done to get more out of it. Well, one other thing that you'll want to be watching every year in your field is for our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to control this tough weed coming up next.